You've reached the Nevada Stray Cat channel, and I, surprisingly enough, am the Nevada Stray Cat. What you're about to see, in spite of the fact that it's being presented as my third full episode, was in fact the very first footage that I filmed for this channel. As such, it's a little raw, completely unscripted, and very unpracticed. Nonetheless, I hope that the information presented is useful to you and that you'll stick around and watch the whole thing. Also, I am not in any way a professional. At best, I am a moderately successful home mechanic. Can-Am recommends that you use only Can-Am approved modifications installed by a Can-Am factory certified technician. This is none of that. Anything that you see me do is almost certainly the wrong way to do it. As such, you should not emulate me, and if you choose to, that's your choice.
Welcome to the underside of the Can-Am Ryker. Right in the middle of the frame there, we've got the CVT, the bottom of the CVT, or continuously variable transmission. That's this whole housing right here. On my particular model, the base model 900, it does not come with a built-in skid plate, although I understand that the Rally models do. Before we get started, I will note that my personal hero, the Steadycraft and Craftsman, likes to advise people to wear you some gloves, and I am. What we're going to do here is that the front of the trike is that way. I have the aluminum skid plate, which has been sent to me by the kind folks at Sling Mods. It's actually made by a company called Evolution R, as are many of the mods that I have already installed on my mighty black Chocobo here. And we're just going to go ahead and install that on, you know what? I am wrong. It goes in this orientation with the wings and the bent up portion facing towards the front. And I can tell that because it's got these pre-drilled holes here. It's got these pre-drilled holes here, and they line up with this end of the CVT. Okay, so we're putting the screws in to hold this aluminum skid plate in place. But because the housing of the CVT transmission is plastic, I am not using Loctite here. Loctite, in its base formulation, is prone to giving off gases that will dry out and embrittle the plastic on your machine, and as such is not suitable for affixing metal to plastic. However, these are self-tapping screws. They're Phillips head screws, unlike the Torx head screws that Bombardier and Can-Am use. And so we just put them right into the plastic, and the plastic itself will hold that in position. And secure against vibration, hopefully, as well as it might if I were using Loctite. And it turns out that although my fancy screwdriver won't fit in here, my ratchet will. So I'm ratcheting that reasonably tight, but not over tightening it, because of course the screw can and will strip out the plastic. Be back. Now, we'll move to the front end here. I'll be putting those screws in here and there. requires a little bit of pressure to get that properly aligned to the mounting hole. The reason this is up on ramps instead of just sitting on a jack is that there is basically no clearance between the frame of the trike and my body, my chest, my head. And if a jack were to fail and come down on me, that would be, well, that would be what we call a very bad day. So that is tight without being over tightened. It is in. The bottom of the continuously variable transmission now has the protection of an aluminum plate. So let's move to the next task forward, which is this yaw sensor right here. Hidden in the user's manual in the section under the tire maintenance, it tells you where the Can-Am approved jack points for the Ryker are. And this right here is one of them. Right here under where the two tubes meet. You put your jack there, you jack it up. There's another one on the other side. I did not put my jack stands there because I'm going to be installing the yaw sensor skid plate, and I need access to this area right here in order to get the clamps on for that. Okay, we're back. We're looking at the position of the yaw sensor and where we're going to put the second skid plate. Once again, the front of the bike is that way. And we are, so the first thing that we need to do, this skid plate, once again from Evolution R, supplied by the fine folks at Sling Mods, is going to fit on just like that. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to pull this plastic rivet or plastic push pin out. Bombardier is quite fond of these. They use them on several lines of product, including their trike family, the Spyders and Rykers. So that's very easy. You just take the little tool, you stick it in. This is a two-piece push pin or push rivet. First you pull out the centerpiece, then you pull out the outer piece, and then you brush off the debris where you accidentally went through a sagebrush a couple of weeks ago. And you have access to the back of their default plastic skid plate, which I am probably going to replace with an aluminum one at some point, but not today. The next thing we need is that there are two of these clamps which hold the edges of the skid plate, and we want, you'll notice that there's you'll notice that there is a bent side and a flat side, and we want that flat side to be down. So we're just going to feed that right through from the top like that, and then we're going to do the very same thing on the other side. Just feed it right through from the top. And then we take the skid plate, and it's got a big old self-tapping bolt that goes in there. I guess it's a screw. My understanding is that the difference between a screw and a bolt is that a screw has a pointy end while a bolt has a flat end, and that sort of seems to split the difference between the two. So you may hear me using the two terms interchangeably. And, well, while we're being honest, let's admit that I pretty much use the two terms interchangeably anyway. And I'm just going to put that on finger tight to start with so that I can align those two brackets and the screws that go in them. Well, in theory, I'm going to put it on finger tight. Okay, I found the right size hex bit. So now I am putting the screw into this bracket. And closing the bracket on top of it. Maybe. Yes, closing the bracket on top of it. And I've got a washer that goes in. And then that plastinut that I mentioned, and the plastic ring should be on top of that. And again, for now, I'm just getting that finger tight. Got a 10mm box end wrench here that I'm going to use in a minute to hold that in place. But first, I'm going to walk around to the other side and put the other one in. Well, that was skilled, wasn't it? Okay, and once again, we've got the screw, the washer, and the nut, all holding that brace in place. And I'm going to use a 10mm box end wrench to hold the nut while my ratcheting screwdriver tightens down on it. Okay, so those two are reasonably tight, and I dropped that big center bolt, but we may have an additional problem in that this is a big honking nut, and I'm not sure that I have the right size socket for that. It's looking like maybe the answer there is no. So I may have to go get the crescent wrench to handle that. All right, so I reoriented the camera. The front of the trike is that way. And I ended up loosening these two side screws, side bolts, because I was having a problem getting the center here to align properly, and as you can see, it's still sitting a little bit forward. So let's pull it back, take another look. That's much better. And I didn't really want to loosen up those screws. Nobody wants to go back and undo work that they've just done. But it's important to remember when you're doing these things that it takes the time it takes. And it is what it is. It doesn't matter if it would be nice if you could wrap this up and go down to Roberto's for some lunch. It doesn't matter if it would be great to finish this up and get it into editing. What matters is what the machine needs and what you have to do to make that happen. And Robert Pirsig talked about this a little bit in his book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. He talked about what he called gumption traps, where you just get to the point where you need so badly to fix the problem, and you need to get it done, that you start making mistakes. And he said, when you get to that point, shut things down, walk away. It doesn't have to be done right this second. It doesn't have to be done on necessarily the schedule that you would prefer it to be done on. Just walk away. Go have dinner. Go read a book. Go watch Phineas and Ferb. And come back to it later. And when you come back to it later, and you've got that rested mind, instead of the gotta do it, Papa Smurf it, why won't this work kind of mindset. Then 9 times out of 10, you'll find that whatever problem that you were having that you couldn't figure out, you can figure it out now. I probably got the sound level on this all wrong. I'm going to have to redo the sound, or it's just going to sound like old man Simpson mumbling to himself. So for the moment, that is secure. Tomorrow I'll go over to the auto place.
Tomorrow I'll go over to the auto place and get the right size socket for that bolt, is the rest of that sentence. And I did do that thing. Unfortunately, what I didn't do is film the rest of my tightening down that final bolt. Fortunately, it looks just like it did in that final picture, except that it's tightened all the way in. This is getting kind of long, so I'm going to cut it here and post the rest of the installation next week. Until then, I'm the Nevada Stray Cat, and I'll see you around.